Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to share with you a deeply meaningful experience, our pilgrimage to the 2025 Rower Jerome internment camps. Before Memorial Day, Ben and I drove to Little Rock, Arkansas to attend. Frank Saccia was there, as well as Reverend Patty Nakai from Chicago, and other friends from Seabrook, and about 140 people from all across the United States. It was a deeply moving experience to meet all those people, including 16 survivors, some of them who had been born in the camps, for there are over 418 born at Rower and 239 at Jerome. And remarkably, we met two women who were 98 years old. Each of us was drawn there by a common thread, our ancestors' past. They endured the shameful chapter of American history, driven by greed, anger, and prejudiced ignorance that led to the forced evacuation and imprisonment of 125,284 people of Japanese ancestry from the West Coast, 2/3 of whom were U.S. citizens. This following President Franklin D. Roosevelt's signing of Executive Order 9066 on February 19, 1942. My mother, Kimi, my aunt, Grace, who's David Yu's mother, and my grandmother, Kishi Yamada, were forced from their home in Stockton, California. They were first sent to the Stockton Assembly Center, the hastily converted Stockton County Fairgrounds, and after several months, loaded onto trains for a long 4-day journey to the rural, swampy lands of Arkansas, to a place known as Rower. Rower and Jerome were the two camps furthest east. The Rower population came from the Santa Anita Assembly Center and the Stockton Assembly Center. The Jerome population mostly came from Fresno and Santa Anita, which included people from the Los Angeles area. Mom was released from Rower after about a year in 1943, when she moved to St. Paul to marry my dad, who was stationed at Fort Snelling. Grace followed her to attend nursing school and later returned to Rower to bring her mother back to St. Paul as the camps were closing in January 1945. Rower was the last of all the camps to close. Our pilgrimage took us by bus to see both the camps and the town of McGee, Arkansas. Our first stop was the Rower internment camp, about 2 hours from Little Rock. Anticipation was heavy as the buses turned down the rural roads, driving deep into the countryside. We had been warned that little remained of the original site, but seeing it firsthand was a stark reality. The tar paper barracks, the barbed wire, and the guard towers are all gone. And all that remains at Rower is a small cemetery and the smokestack from the hospital off in the far distance. What laid before us were acres of soybeans. The main monument in the cemetery was built in 1944 and was dedicated to all those buried or cremated there, 168 in total. The Japanese term ire means consoling the spirits. The irehi is the monument for consoling the spirits. It is a tall column decorated with Japanese Shinto patterns and floral designs on the sides. At the top is a globe crowned with an American eagle. It was constructed and designed by the camp's residents out of cast concrete. It was reinforced with found materials gathered by the internees, scraps of rebar and barbed wire. This monument serves as a meaningful metaphor, for these were the very materials that were used to enclose them in their prison. The base of the monument features a Buddhist symbol, the lotus flower. Lotus can't grow in pristine waters, but thrive in muddy soils, blooming into beautiful and pure flowers, rising above the muddy waters. symbolizing that this lotus is feeding out of the very unfreedoms and adversity the internees were experiencing. The lotus representing transcending suffering and rising above. There is also a monument dedicated to the 100th Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the all-Japanese American unit recognized as one of the most highly decorated in all U.S. Army history. There were many men from Rower who had enlisted, and this monument was dedicated just 1 month before the camps closed in 1945. The Reicho, the book for consoling the spirits, was brought out by the Japanese American National Museum. This book was the inspiration of Reverend Duncan Duquesne Williams, a Zen Buddhist priest of the University of Southern California Shinso Ito Center. And he's the author of the book, American Sutra. You might remember Reverend Williams for when he came to Minneapolis in 2020 to give a lecture at the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center and also at the University of Minnesota. You might also remember that this was the last gathering that we had before the country completely shut down from COVID. The Reicho honors all those imprisoned people who were broken by a government that incarcerated them. It is the first comprehensive listing of the 125,284 persons of Japanese ancestry held across 75 sites, including the 10 camps and other detention locations managed by the U.S. Army, the Department of Justice, the Wartime Civil Control Administration, and the War Relocation Authority. Much thought and symbolism was put into creating this immense 25-pound book, from the design, the binding, to the fonts they used, to the paper. And each name is listed sequentially in the order of the person's age at the time of incarceration. From the oldest, a 92-year-old woman born in the 1850s, to the youngest, a baby born in 1945. Inserted between each name is a delicate red symbol that separates each name and symbolizes bloodline. Embedded into the front and back pages of the book are ceramic tiles made from the soil collected from the 75 different sites. In remembrance and acknowledgement, you are invited to touch the ceramic tile to connect with the soil before stamping the name of your ancestor with a blue hanko stamper. And as in the Japanese tradition of kintsugi, the tradition of repairing broken ceramic pieces by using gold to fix its parts, thus embracing imperfection while also making each piece more beautiful, the reparative process of inviting the public to stamp and acknowledge each name materially transforms the nature of the book. It emphasizes the Buddhist principle of impermanence, that all things are subject to change. 5 survivors were able to stamp their names in the book right there on the grounds where they were incarcerated. From there, we traveled to the town of McGee. Rower is 13 miles north of McGee, and Jerome is about 17 miles south. In 1942, each of those camps had a larger population than the entire town of McGee. There were approximately 8,500 residents in each camp. The train depot in McGee has been turned into a small museum, and there we viewed photographs and artifacts from the camps. Many of us were scouring the photo albums and yearbooks and displays, searching for images of our relatives, though for me to no avail. And after a catered lunch, we were welcomed by the mayor of McGee and entertained by the Central Arkansas Taiko Group, and enjoyed a mini obon with many participants joining in to dance. We then traveled on to the Jerome site, and sadly, there's nothing left there at that camp. except for the smokestack, and a historic marker that was erected in 1992. We understand there were plans for a cemetery, but nothing appears to have ever been built. And so that left the families of the Jerome internees with a rather empty feeling. Reverend Patty led us in chanting the Jusege. And then the Rachel book was presented again so that representatives could stamp the name of the Buddhist priests who traveled back and forth between the two camps, offering spiritual support. Reverend Patty stamped the name of Reverend Kono, who established the Midwest Buddhist Temple in Chicago. Reverend Kono was instrumental in establishing our very own Sangha, the Twin Cities Buddhist Association. Frank Sachia stamped the name of Reverend Uno, the father of Taitetsu Uno, who is the author of River of Fire, River of Water, and Bits of Rubble, two excellent books on Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. The following days included presentations and videos on many subjects, like life in the temporary detention center and resettlement after camps. And that's where we learned that over 20,000 internees went to Chicago after their release. It was both informational and emotional. Ben and I weren't able to stay for Saturday's intergenerational discussions, but perhaps Frank can fill you in on those details. It was incredible to connect with all those people and to reflect on the past, to walk on the land where our ancestors lived. The uniqueness that brought all 140 of us back from all over the country to this faraway place in Arkansas, holding on to one common thread. Each of us holding on to the thread of our ancestors. How they got there was all the same, yet they wove this cloth of individual stories of perseverance and resiliency through this difficult interruption in their lives. Instantly, we found connections and shared bonds with each other through the stories. Seeing and stamping the Rachel book, witnessing all those names listed together, the enormity of it was overwhelming. But it created a sacred space for acknowledging their lives, to honor their memory and existence. By participating in stamping, we are remembering and acknowledging all of their lives. Leaving this mark has been a way to honor the personhood of our family members who suffered those terrible indignities and losses. By participating in the stamping of the book, we become part of the permanent record, honoring each individual's humanity and suffering. As I reflect on this pilgrimage, reviewing the pictures and listening to the stories, it's so hard to fathom how this could possibly happen and how they could possibly have coped. Yet, I think of the words of my mother, for she always told us, if it hadn't been for the camps, we, us kids, would have never been born. I believe that her faith in the Buddhist teachings helped her navigate those difficult times. And I realize that it is only due to all the causes and conditions in life that I am here today. The Japanese would probably not have settled here in Minnesota. There would not been a need for a Buddhist Sangha here. And because of all these causes and conditions, our Sangha has endured for 79 years. The Dharma, the Nembutsu, is the teaching that gave our ancestors the strength to live their lives. It's also what gave them hope for the future. With gratitude, we honor our ancestors who have made it possible for us to hear the sutras. We gather with the hope that the Buddha Dharma will continue to be transmitted to future generations. By acknowledging our Dharma connections to those who have passed away, We are empowered to further pursue this endless path that unfolds before us through the workings of Amita's name, Namo Amidabas. And so, 80 years later, have we learned anything from the past? It's up to each one of us to remember the past, to share the history, and to do our utmost to make sure that it never happens again. Namo Amidabas. Namo Amidabas. Namo Amidabas.